All right, so this is just a look at some of the different types of graduations that exist out there that we're going to be seeing on this measurement unit. And I've talked a little bit about first edge, second edge, third edge, fourth edge. Just a reminder, when you get like the steel rule, the first edge and the second edge are going to be on one side, the top and the bottom, the third and fourth edge on the other side. And a way to identify what amount of graduations are being used here, whether it's hundredths, 32nds, 64ths, twelfths, eighths, whatever. You got to look carefully at the ruler itself so you can get a feel for it. So when we look here, there's a variety of different rulers. They look different, and based on whichever one we're using, we want to be able to first of all identify, is this metric, or meaning like millimeters, centimeters, or is it English, which is inches or feet. And once you've identified that, then you are going to look at what number graduation is on each unit. So sometimes it's pretty obvious where they'll put the number right there, 16 or 28, 12. I know it's upside down, but that's 100. And we should be able to read it. Here's a very common one. This is one that is like the one that we use on our steel rule. And we can see here this says first edge. And based on this, if we're looking at the first edge here, what is the graduation specific unit for each graduated line there? And then we look at the second edge, and that would be this edge on the ruler at the bottom. What is the graduation for the second edge? Okay, how about the fourth edge, which is this top edge right here? What is the graduation amount for the top edge? And then down below this third edge, take a look and see. So I didn't say this before, but just by looking at this here, this is an example of a steel edge that is with inches. And because we're not seeing the familiar listed on here for millimeters, which is metric, and we can see the way that these graduated numbers are spaced out, that this is English. Now, to find one that is broken up into millimeters, you'll see the on there, and you should be able to tell what's going on. So let me zoom in on this one. So this is an example of a ruler that would have inches on one side and centimeters and millimeters, really millimeters, on the other side. So when you see things in eighths, sixteenths, 32nds, 64ths, that's always going to be inches, because that's just the way the English metric, I'm sorry, that's just the way that the English measuring system is lined up. With metric, that would be in tens. So millimeters, centimeters, meters, those are all in bases of tens and hundreds. So up here we can see that the first edge is in 30 seconds. This is of an inch. The second edge at the bottom is in 64ths. Now, the other side of the ruler has the third edge and the fourth edge. Third edge, fourth edge. And it tells us right here we're in millimeters. It also says it right there, Now, you see up here, this little edge this is broken up even smaller than millimeters. It's in half millimeters. So each of these little graduated lines, these little tiny ones that are really close together, represent a half a millimeter. So for example, in between 40 and 50, we have 10 millimeters or 20 half millimeters. So if I was going to try and say, like, what is this point right here? Well, at the bottom, it's a little easier because they're in millimeters on the third edge. So it's 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. But if I want to look more carefully at in between here on the fourth edge, which these are in half millimeters, and it's really hard to tell unless I zoom in here. But everything there would be like if I'm going to start at 40 and work my way across, it's going to be 40. Then the next line is 40 and a half, then 41, 41 and a half, 42, 42 and a half, 43, and so on. So you want to look very carefully to be able to tell the difference between those. All right, moving on here, we have some examples. So we're looking right here, and if we look carefully, we see this in 16, I'm sorry, in 30 seconds. And then up top, it's in 64 because the highest number we see, which is upside down, but is a 56. So this is 56, then I got 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, and then if I get to the 64th line, well, that's a full inch going backwards that way. Right here, we're looking at this bottom edge, and I can see that these are in 30 seconds. So I've got 1 inch right here. This is 1 32nd, 2 32nd, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, all the way up here till I get to 28 30 seconds, 29, 30, 31, and then 32 is really 32 over 32, which is a full hole. So that would be 2 inch line right there. But the question is, what is this arrow pointing to? Well, here's 12 30 seconds, which if we round down is going to be 3/8, because 12 30 seconds, if you divide by 2, gets you 6/16, and then if you divide by 2 again, it gets you 3/32. So remember that in this unit, you do have to round to you have to round your fractions down, or reduce them. Sorry, round's not the right word. If you have to reduce your fractions down to the lowest common denominator. And so once you've reduced your fraction, then that's going to be the correct answer for some of these questions. So before we get to reducing, just sometimes you don't even have to reduce. In this case, here's 12. The line right after 12 is going to be 13. And the important thing is that we know that it's 30 seconds. So this one would be 13 30 seconds. All right, the next one. So this one here looks like measuring tape. Up top, we've got inches. Down below, we've got centimeters. We can see that the whole measuring tape would be 5 meters long and then 16 inches. That's what's in this box here. So since it's pointing to this point here, we should be able to read this as in inches. Now, the question is this in eighths, 16ths, 32nds, 64ths? Well, you should be able to just count how many lines are between the 4 inch and the 5 inch. I got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I can tell that 8 is halfway because this really long line is halfway, or you can keep counting. But either way, you should be able to tell how many graduated lines are in between 4 and 5. And that would be 16. So we know that all these lines are in 16ths of an inch. So this black arrow is pointing to this point right here. And so the question is, what's this measure? Well, you can just count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you know that this is 4 and 7/16. You can't reduce that fraction, so 4 and 7/16 is it. Moving on here. We've got the or the half millimeter and the full millimeter again. And so remember, just like that other screen, these are in half millimeter. All these lines are in half millimeter. Down below, these are full millimeter. So I got 10, then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and so on all the way to 20. But from 10 to 20, I got 10, 10 and a half, 11, 11 and a half, 12, 12 and a half, 13, all the way to 20. So looking at it like this, here's 20, here's 20 and a half, here's 21. What is this line right here? This arrow is pointing to? Should be 21 and a half. Now we got another one here, and this arrow is pointing down below. So we're looking at this edge, and we can see that this is 64. So we know it's going to be in 64ths. And here's the big number, 48, and it's pointing to the line right after that. Well, since these are going in 64ths, these are all going up by 1. So what is the measure of this black arrow pointing to? Yes, 49 over 64, because here's 48, the next line is 49.